Hi and welcome to Lee on the Lectionary, and today we're looking at the readings for the week known as Proper 23, and those readings are in Year A, Isaiah chapter 25 verses 1 to 9, Philippians chapter 4 verses 1 to 9, and Matthew 22 verses 1 to 14. This week our readings teach us that destruction will come to the city which opposes God, as the world rejoices in the feast of salvation. Isaiah's little apocalypse focuses on the downfall of God's enemies and the promise of a restored and renewed creation which breaks forth in joy. Chapter 25 is particularly concerned with the demise of the ruthless who tyrannize God's people. The destruction of their city, their fortified way of life, has been planned from long ages past and will last into eternity. But God will be a refuge and shelter for the poor and needy who have been assaulted on every side by those terrifying alien oppressors. Instead of the biting winter storm and the stabbing summer heat, they will enjoy calm and rest on God's holy mountain and a feast of the richest fare. Death itself will evaporate, its dark shroud and shadow removed from the world as forgiveness descends in its place and every tear is wiped away with joy. Jesus' parable of the wedding banquet conjures up a similar scene. A king throws a party for his son's wedding and sends out messengers to call the guests to come, a reference, of course, to the wedding supper of the Lamb, as Revelation chapter 19 verse 9 calls it, and the proclamation of the gospel, which commands all people to repent and turn to Christ. But those who are called in the story are negligent, dismissive, or downright abusive in response. So the king destroys those who murder his messengers and burns their city to the ground in just and righteous indignation. Echoes, of course, of Isaiah 25 verse 2, but applied more shockingly to the fall of Jerusalem. Yet he still wants to celebrate for his son, so many more are called from elsewhere, and the church is filled, first for the Jews and then for the Gentiles. However, some of those later invitees, both good and bad, are also negligent and contemptuous of the privilege that they have been given. The man without his wedding suit is thrown into the outer darkness, where those who rejected the Lord earlier are crying and gnashing their teeth in frustrated regret. Notably, Jesus concludes not that many are called but few respond well. Rather, he says, many are called, few are chosen. Philippians chapter 4 takes us back to the joy of those whose names are in the book of life. They stand firm in the Lord, struggling together in the work of the gospel, but must also take steps to end their struggles with each other. Paul urges those who have fallen out with fellow believers to rejoice and be reasonable because Jesus is near. Whether near attentively or chronologically is perhaps deliberately ambiguous. Rather than speaking crossly to one another, they should speak instead to God in peacemaking prayer. God's peace protects those who pray. Paul also urges them to fill their minds with good things, whatever is true, noble, right, pure, whether spiritual or not. It is good to dwell on things which are worthy of praise in the sight of God, rather than on the faults of others or more ignoble thoughts. He also exhorts them to continue in the path which he laid out for them. Now, some may balk at the idea of sticking to what Paul taught and how he embodied the gospel in his lifestyle, but the God of peace is with those, and those only, who follow Paul's example in word and deed.